to everyone on behalf of Lancashire Rugby. My name is Loney, and I'm bringing you a video today in and around the position of hooker and some things that you might want to consider around the set piece, some attack, some defence, and a couple of general things, whether you're currently playing hooker, whether you're looking to transition to hooker, or whether you're coaching some of the technical aspects. Hopefully this video will be able to help you along with a couple of those things. Firstly, the set piece. Now that's obviously a part of the hooker's role, which is key in terms of making sure line out and scrum is a good level, and technically you're doing everything you need to do to ensure that those sort of set phases are being successful for your team. Now with line out throwing, you know, that's the obvious place for a hooker to be judged against for sort of week to week, and it's really important for a team that you're able to throw the ball, you know, not just to the front, to the middle, but towards the back of the line out, so we can open up various different options for your team in attack. Now, throwing is a very technical skill, as you'd imagine, and it takes lots of practice and sort of when you are practicing your throwing, it's never enough that you're doing. You can always be doing more. But there's a few things that I tend to consider, and I've done this with sort of players that I've coached, and it's really around the hands, elbows, the movement of the ball, and also the release. Now, when I was thinking about this video, I actually dug out an old ball that I used when I was younger in terms of my hand position. One of the coaches that helped me throw, he drew my hand position onto the ball, so I would always have a reference of where my hands should be, because a lot of the time when you're throwing in, it's not quite going as you want it to be. You know, your hands might be in the wrong place, your hands might be finishing in the wrong place, it might be going over sort of back over your head in the wrong sort of plane of movement, and that is, you know, can be sort of the issue of a not straight or an overthrow. So hands being in a good position, your elbows being nice and tight but not uncomfortable, the movement over your head being nice and straight, and then your release finishing high, so we're not dropping our hands and losing our power and our direction. Timing and understanding is also important when you're throwing in a line out, and a lot of that comes from your individual jumpers and the movements you do in your line outs, but also just a general understanding of when the ball needs to come into the line out. Often I see some hookers that are throwing the ball really way too late, and the ball is almost going jumper, and then the ball gets in there very much second. What we need to be getting to is jumper and ball coming at the same time to give the defensive line out less chance of stealing that ball. And also around the mental skills. Now, much like goal kicking in rugby, or maybe a penalty in football, or off the tee in golf, when you're throwing the ball in, it's very much a spotlight moment. So mental skills are really, really important. And you can help yourself in training and in various other non-match situations where you're creating pressure and you're creating distraction in your practices. So it could be throwing under fatigue, it could be with throwing with lots of distractions or noise or movement. All these things, you know, if you bring them into your training environment, it's going to make it less difficult for you to throw in matches where you've got maybe crowd noise or opposition noise or something waving around that's going to try and put you off. So mental skills really important as well. Within the scrum, strike is becoming ever more important for a hooker. In sort of years gone by, the strike was key, and the height of the scrum helped that, and then it kind of moved away from the strike rather than just sort of hitting and going. Now the strike is very much back in the game, and actually you get a free kick or penalty if you didn't strike for the ball. So being technically competent with that, in terms of having a low right shoulder, in terms of having good flexibility in your hip to get across the ball so you can get it into the right channel to the number 8, and then making sure the hooker stays square in the scrum so you can add the power to the push is really key, and a consideration for a hooker. Also working with your loose head and your tight head, depending on whether it's attacking or defensive ball, definitely needs to be a consideration too. So hookers and loose head props often work together to isolate tight heads, because it's essentially 2 versus 1, and getting that synergy, but what I suppose while also supporting your own tight head is really important. And whether you're playing or coaching the role, you know, having an understanding and going over those technical points in the scrum is pretty key to making sure we have success either side of the ball. Now, hookers in terms of attack, you know, they're often seen as major ball carriers for the team, and there's, you know, very different types of players in terms of the hooker position that manage to do this. You have the hookers that carry in tighter, more congestive areas. Then you have the hookers that prefer to be a little bit wider and in more of a loose position. And with hookers in a team, you can set a team up or have a dynamic within a team where they perform a different type of role. And I think we can all think of players sort of at the top end of the game where they can fit in one of those sides. But understanding your ball carrying role within the team is pretty important, whilst being a person that's going to work hard, is going to support the ball in terms of offloads or actually getting the first man over into a ruck for a quick ball. You've got to have a lot of emphasis on those parts as well. In defence, I've thought about this in terms of where a hooker just wants to be a really busy defender, and much like an open side flanker where they're all action and making big impacts across the pitch, you'd want much the same from the hooker. And on that point, in terms of jackling or competing for the ball, you do expect lots from your open side flanker, and I think a lot of modern day hookers, you expect plenty for them as well, especially considering the size of some of the back five forwards, number 8s, number 6. They can be well in excess of 6'3", 6'4", and the second row's in excess of 6'6". So if you're a shorter, squatter player as in a hooker, 6'6", much like a lot of the sort of best sevens in the world, you'll be able to get in a nice low position and compete for possession or slow the ball down, which is going to be very important for your team. On both attack and defence, the transition between the set piece is really important as well. Actually knowing what your strengths are as a player, but also what your team needs from the hooker position. And that might be from more of a coaching point. So in terms of some teams set up where the hooker is very much involved in phase 2 from a scrum or a line out, other teams like to sit their hookers a little bit wider, so they're getting involved in play more set phase 3 or 4, so they can expose some wider area channels and bring that loose and effective ball carrying from a little bit wider. Whether you're a player or whether you're a coach, I think being understanding of a player's strength in terms of those two things is very important and can change the dynamic of a team. So if you're a player who would want to get involved at maybe in an earlier phase count where there's maybe more players on feet, well, you get yourself involved there. If you feel you're a little bit looser or a bit wider in terms of where you can affect the game, get into that position so you can do the most damage in terms of the attack. And same thing with defence. Try and get yourself in the game at the right sort of phase where you can affect it the most. Right, that's everything from me. I hope you found some of those bits useful. It's been real good exercise, in these isolation times to be thinking about that, and particularly from playing or coaching, it's nice to share a few things with the Lancashire community today. Everyone stay safe, and thanks for listening.